Let's go back to 1989.
What's the hottest 16-bit video game system with true arcade games, great graphics, real challenge, stereo sound, and the hottest library too, with games like Altered Beast, Golden Axe, Super Hang-On, Forgotten World, Space Harrier II, Revenge of Shinobi, Tommy Lasorda Baseball, Buxton, Last Battle, Arnold Palmer Tournament Golf, Super Thunderblade, Zoom, Thunder Force 2, Ghouls and Ghosts, Mystic Defender, Rambo 3, and more? Genesis from Sega. Genesis, the new generation in video games.
Welcome to the Poor Man's Retro Game Room, and you know, I was lucky enough back in the day, at least if it wasn't right at launch, where I'm at in the country, it was that first year. And I remember picking up my Sega Genesis and just being so excited and getting it home, connecting it to my TV, and putting Altered Beast in there and playing Altered Beast for the first time with that big old Batarang 3-button controller. Man, that beautiful black Sega Genesis sitting on the shelf under my TV was awesome, man, awesome. So yeah, I figured we'd kind of go back in time. 1989, that was a good year. And let's check out every game that was released on the launch. So it's 6 games. We're going to take a look at every single one of them. And yeah, I thought that'd be kind of fun and nostalgic. So yeah, let's go back in time. And without further ado, let's check out the 6 launch games for the Sega Genesis.
Rise from your grave.
I remember the first time playing Altered Beast right after I opened up my Sega Genesis, got it all hooked up, put Altered Beast in, and fired it up, and just seeing the colors, the big sprites, the graphics, you know, the sound, pulled right out of the arcade. Now, of course, it did lose some fidelity from the arcade version, unfortunately, but it was a darn good port, and it was a very good game to show what the Sega Genesis could do. It's a great beat-em-up where you play as a warrior resurrected by Zeus, and you're asked to rescue his daughter, Athena. You can transform, of course, into various different beast forms. That's the whole hook of the game. You get the 3, you know, power-ups in the stage, and that will transform you into this other beast. And of course, if you get to the boss without collecting those 3 power-ups, then the boss will run away, and you'll continue the level until you do actually get 3 power-ups and transform into that beast. Once you do that, and you get to the boss, there's your boss fight. Altered Beast was a great pack-in game and one of the best launch titles, of course, for the Sega Genesis. Space Harrier II is a sequel to the arcade classic where you control a Harrier fighter and you soar through fantastical landscapes shooting down enemies. It's a kind of an on-rail shooter. You know what? It's not a bad game. It's hard to play this one after playing the arcade game or even playing Space Harrier on the 32X. Of course, 32X wasn't out at that time, so we played what we had. It wasn't a bad game at all, though, and it did kind of, I don't know, it was kind of cool as a launch title because it showed some of that pseudo 3D. You know, it's just, I think the frame rate isn't great. There's some stutter, and it just, I don't know, it just doesn't feel as good as, of course, Space Harrier. Especially on the 32X or the arcade. But I don't know, I had a lot of fun with this back in the day, and it was a good time. And back in the day, this was a pretty good game to have just because it was, you know, like having an arcade game at home. So, but that's Space Harrier II. Not a bad title. Last Battle is a side-scrolling beat-em-up, and it was actually Fist of the North Star in Japan. And there's a few regional differences, of course. You know, despite the title change, they did censor the North America version. I believe in the Japanese version, when you kick guys, I think their heads fly off, and there's more blood in it. It's actually a cooler game because of that. This isn't a great game, though. It really isn't. It's really stiff. It's very simplistic. And you can really see how, you know, this is one of the very, very early titles on the Sega Genesis. I can't bring myself to play through past the first level on this one. It just doesn't hold my attention, and yeah, I don't have a lot of good things to say about it other than, you know, the big sprites again, showing off some of the colors. The graphics aren't too bad, but anyway, that's Last Battle for the Sega Genesis. Super Thunderblade is one of those games I passed on back in the day, and I picked it up later in life just because I wanted to collect all the original launch titles for the Sega Genesis. I've been able to do that, of course, and it's pretty easy to do. Most of the games that are launch titles are fairly cheap and easily obtained, especially on eBay, of course, and you can usually get them in pretty good shape, you know, complete in box for a fairly cheap price. I am glad that I did pick up Super Thunderblade, and I have played it, you know, probably a dozen times. It is a lot of fun. It's one of those games that I'll throw in if I've got, you know, half hour to spare or whatever, you know, put it in and just play and just have fun. It's one of those pick up and play games. Anybody can play it, of course, and it does have a different view. There is an overhead view as well on some of the stages, so you know, the bosses aren't bad either. It's not a bad game. it's just a good game. So, you know, I would say it's probably in between good and bad. But anyway, Super Thunderblade, yeah, it's not bad. And I would recommend, you know, if you're wanting to play those early Sega Genesis games or a launch title, it's a good game to have in your library. Thunder Force 2 was a really good game, and I think that probably would have been my recommendation at launch. You know, if you get the Sega Genesis and you get one other title, I'm either going to say Tommy Lasorda Baseball or Thunder Force 2, just because, you know, it was cool back then, and sports games were very important back then. But Thunder Force 2 is a really good game. It's very difficult. You'll have like the overhead shooter part, and then there are some horizontal shooting stages in the game as well. I like those a little better than the overhead view, but it is a difficult game. It's very fast, especially overhead, man. I mean, it's really super fast, and it's easy to die in this game, but it is a good game. It was a lot of fun, and of course, you know, just kind of having that arcade experience at home, because Thunder Force 2 is, you know, it's like an arcade game. So Thunder Force 2 was a very good game, and a title I can recommend even today. There's not a whole lot to say about Tommy Lasorda's Baseball. It's just a solid baseball game. I remember playing this back in the day and, putting hours into this game. It was a lot of fun. You could also see, just by the graphics and the sound effects and the music, that you could see that next step being taken and how much better it was than the baseball games that were on the NES. Now I'm saying that as far as graphics, gameplay even, but I would say, Baseball Stars on the NES is a all-time classic game and one of the greatest baseball games ever made. So, but Tommy Lasorda's Baseball, it was good, and I did play it a lot back in the day. Fictional teams, fictional players, of course. But it's a really solid, good baseball game, and it was a great game to release at the launch of the Sega Genesis.
Save!
Hey, thanks for joining me today. Thanks for clicking on this video and sticking it out until the end. Man, I appreciate it. And you know what? This has been a lot of fun, and it's been great to relive kind of the launch of the Sega Genesis and get some of that nostalgia. But I would love to hear from you, man. What is your experience with the Sega Genesis? What games do you own? Do you have a Sega Genesis collection? Just tell me about the first time you played a Sega Genesis. I think that would be really cool. And I know that anybody watching this video would love to hear your experience as well. And so yeah, get in the comments, man. Let us know. We'd appreciate it. All right, well, thanks for joining me today, and until next time, we'll catch you later.